Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Your Football Opinion. I am your host, Theo Ash, and before we get into the real content of this episode, I just want to acknowledge, yes, I've changed my camera angle. I dug out my old webcam, put it on top of my second monitor, so you won't have to be looking up, like under my chin from the laptop camera below me. But you do get a little bit of a better look at my room decor, which I don't know where my girlfriend has collected all these clown pictures over the years. We got one painting at an easel. We got one looking kind of unhappy. They both got birthday hats on because both of us have celebrated our birthdays this week, so it's a bit of a festive atmosphere in here. But just don't want to freak anybody out with the clown stuff. My director of content here at PFN told me that my background was a little bit dripless in our meeting today. I understand. But at the moment, I don't have any like football merchandise at all. For as much as I talk about it, I have no posters, no bobbleheads, no mini helmets, like nothing. I have a Jack Jones jersey that I could display, and I think one Packers hoodie and a few hats. 2 Packers hats, I'd say. But that's the extent of my collection right now. I'm working on making it a more fitting background. I'll rotate this desk over this wall that is blank to my right. I'll get a few posters, maybe a whiteboard so I can draw out some of the concepts that I'm talking about. It's going to look more football-y in here soon, I promise. But for now, you're stuck staring at the birthday clowns and the landscapes, and I think it's a cute little eclectic collection back there. But just know that I'm working on getting some cool sports paraphernalia. If anybody knows any websites where I could go look for some vintage stuff, because that's kind of what I'm looking for, I would say. Let me know. Posters specifically. But at any rate, we're talking about record predictions today. This is something I traditionally would do on TikTok. The past few summers, I've made videos for every single team. This year, with the new job, just life, I haven't made as many as I would have liked to of the individual videos going through everybody's record. But I've got this podcast now, and I figure it's a little bit slow to talk about the preseason action. I'd rather just run through every team and ultimately say what their record is going to be. I think I'm going to make this a 4-part thing. I thought it was just going to be 2, AFC and NFC. But today, in the time it takes me to turn these episodes around, 2 per week, I just didn't have time to research 16 teams, to talk about 16 teams in a short amount of time here. So I split my work for the NFC, which is what I'm covering today, in half. This is NFC Part 1. We'll do 8 teams. I could have done 2 divisions each, but there's been a lot of division previews out there, and that's ultimately what this would become if I did it by division. When I did the videos on TikTok, I would spin a wheel, and that's how I would decide what team to talk about next. I kind of like the randomness of it. Like, you don't know what team I'm going to talk about next, or together. They're not always grouped with the same other teams. So I decided to go random again. So we got 9 random NFC teams that I'm going to predict today. I'll say them off the top. We got the Saints to start out with. Then I'm moving to Dallas, and then Carolina, and then Minnesota, Philly, Atlanta, San Francisco, and Chicago. So that's what's on the docket today. And let's get right into it with New Orleans. You know, this is a team that I'm actually high on, and it feels weird. I feel like I'm the only one who likes the Saints this year. I'm out here on an island. I feel like everybody wants them to move on to the new era so bad, and this current core just doesn't move anybody, and it's boring, and I get that. It is boring. But that doesn't mean they're not a quality roster right now. Last year, they were the epitome of mid. I'll admit that. They went 9-8. They failed to make the playoffs in the league's easiest division. And a lot of people wrote him off then and there because this offseason they were 42 million over the salary cap. So how can they do anything but stay mid? But I think they had a decent offseason. They were able to restructure everybody again. Derek Carr, Ryan Ramczyk, Marshawn Lattimore, Eric McCoy, Nathan Shepard, Cam Jordan, Carl Granderson, Cesar Ruiz, and Taysom Hill. They all got money moved around in one way or another. And it freed up enough cap space to sign Chase Young and Willie Gay. And then I like their draft a decent amount, specifically the Kool-Aid McKinstry pick in the second round. He was easily a first-round caliber corner to me. He wasn't as hyped as a prospect this cycle as he was when he was kind of an underclassman in Alabama, starting in the SEC as a freshman, being locked down. He's been targeted less and less as the years have gone on. And last year, he was hardly thrown at all. And so he didn't have a lot of production on the ball like Terrion Arnold did, or Quinion Mitchell did. He had some nice picks. Nate Wiggins. I feel like everybody got more shine and ended up going higher than Kool-Aid McKinstry, but his record as a corner is pretty spotless over the course of his career at Bama, which is DBU. And I think he can defend the run, play man, play zone, whatever you need him to do. He's pretty good at it. He looked a little bit concerning on tape with his long speed. I thought he got beat a few times last year, real deep, but he wasn't really looked at. Like I said, he wasn't targeted. And he was dealing with a foot injury. He ended up running a good 40 time. So I think I can forgive it a little bit. And I feel confident projecting a top 10 finish for the Saints defense in 2024, not only because they play in the NFC South, but because they are legitimately talented, especially in the secondary. Alongside Kool-Aid McKinstry, you've got Marshawn Lattimore, Alontae Taylor, Paulson Adebo, Tyrann Mathieu. This preseason, Rico Payton, Jordan Howden, Will Harris have looked good. And even though Marshawn Lattimore hasn't been at his peak in a while, at this point, they don't really even need him. He's been in trade rumors every offseason for a reason. But they've held on to him, and anything he can give them is just kind of a bonus. Because I still think that he is a good covered corner. And I think this all manifests itself in the man coverage numbers that I see. When they played man last year, they allowed less than 50% of the passes against them to be completed. Only the mighty Browns defense can say that as well. 49% completion percentage versus man, 4.1 interception rate when they were playing man. That's the highest rate in the league. The key this year will be, can they complement the secondary with an above average pass rush? Because last year, it wasn't great. The opposing quarterbacks held the ball on average 3.02 seconds against the Saints. That was the highest mark in the league. They were the only team above 3 seconds. And this signifies two things. First of all, the secondary was good, but it also means that the defensive line wasn't really forcing the issue. They weren't forcing quarterbacks to get rid of the ball quickly. New Orleans was 22nd in pressure rate last season, despite how long quarterbacks were holding the ball. And when this defense played zone instead of man, their pressure rate was bottom 5, and they got picked apart. So guys like Brian Brzee, guys like Chase Young, they're going to need to step up, and I believe that they can. Brzee going into his second season, he was at an 8.4 pressure rate last year. That's solid for a rookie, but he has it within him to go much higher. The guy, he's a human highlight reel. I love watching him rush the passer. He is so active. He strings moves together like no other. He's just like jamming buttons, long arms, swipe, swim, bull rush. It all happens in the same rep. And he's fast enough and athletic enough that it can legitimately work. Definitely needs to refine his approach, but could he be this year's Justin Madubuike? Could he push for double-digit sacks? It's lofty, but I do think it's within his range of outcomes. He's definitely somebody to watch out for. And then Chase Young is the other guy. They freed up the cap this offseason to pay him to a 1-year, $13 million deal. Brzee, he had 31 pressures last season. Respectable. Cam Jordan, even more. He got to 45. Chase Young had 66 and 7.5 sacks. I feel like he's got the reputation of a disappointment, and he definitely was loafing at some points in the NFC Championship game, which definitely didn't do him any favors. He picks up a lot of slander on social media, and some of it is deserved. He has fallen short of the expectations in a way, but he is an upgrade for the Saints. and he had a good Super Bowl. He had a good season last year. He's been productive against good left tackles like Jordan Mailata. I don't think this has to be a bad pass rush next year at all. And they've got a really good secondary. This is a more complete defense than it was last year when they ranked ninth in defensive EPA per play. Some of that was aided by schedule, but they kind of still have the easiest schedule. I trust this side of the ball to keep New Orleans out of the top 10 of the draft at the very least. And when you have a good defense with like decent offense is a good formula. All right. Like I watched the Browns, beat people's faces in last year. And I don't think the Saints defense will be quite at that level, but also their offense is a lot more average than what the Browns trotted out there. Like the Jets are a feisty team with some of the worst quarterback play like known to man. And Derek Carr, like it or not, the dude is average. The dude is decent. The dude gets rid of the ball quickly. He avoids interceptions. I am hoping that level of offensive competency with Carr, Shaheed, and Olave stays the same, and then they add a little bit of explosiveness on the ground with Kubiak coming in, the old OC for the 49ers. I think they've got the tackles, the linemen, to run kind of that Shanahan-y wide zone type formula. Fuaga and Penning are perfect for that. Now, can they protect the passer this year? I don't know. It is unfortunate that Ramczyk was wrecked physically. I'm sure Trevor Penning is not what they wanted their plan to be at this point. And Talisa Fuaga is talented, but he's a rookie. Some people thought he should kick inside to guard. I kind of thought that. Like, doesn't really have crazy length. Not always at the right landmark, dropping as a tackle. So I have no doubt that that's going to look rough at times. If you want to be low on this team because of that, I get it. But the Ramczyk and Pete duo wasn't exactly elite last season. And again, like, this is an average offense, not a terrible one. So I think they're about as good as anyone else in the NFC South. And I think like 10-7. 10-7 is a very attainable mark with this schedule. They face the AFC West alongside their own division. There's some softballs in there. NFC East has some softballs as well. We'll see how many upsets they can collect, but I think I see a lot of wins here. Really like the defense. I'm fine with the offense, really. I think it's going to be okay. It's going to be whatever. It's going to be meh. I'll take meh with a good defense. But let's move on to the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to make the bold assumption that CeeDee gets paid by somebody. I don't know if it'll be Jerry Jones, if he's like awake enough to do that. But someone is going to take the wheel and give this guy a contract, in my opinion. And as long as Micah Parsons, CeeDee Lamb, and Dak Prescott are all healthy, the Cowboys are just kind of automatically a great team. This is, I know some people are going to roll their eyes at this, but this is kind of the Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Travis Kelce of the NFC, if you think about it. I mean, Dak was probably the best quarterback in the conference last year. Parsons, the best defensive player. CeeDee Lamb, the best receiving weapon, or even offensive weapon. I guess McCaffrey's in the NFC. He's the best receiving weapon out there. As long as those three aren't injured and the supporting cast is anywhere above like practice squad level, the Cowboys are contenders because Lamb is truly unguardable. He's the only guy you need. Like, there's no scheme or player that can fully stifle CeeDee when he's at his best. His consistent presence in the slot creates all kinds of matchup issues over the course of the game. Like, he's going to be on linebackers. He's going to exploit linebackers. And then Lamb and Dak have the kind of chemistry that makes everything just unstoppable. It's after the ball is snapped that CeeDee is making adjustments to his routes to get open. And he and Dak are on the exact same page about that. So if it's man, Lamb will just separate. And if it's zone, Dak is throwing to just a spot that you as a defender physically cannot get to. He knows where you're dropping to. He's going to put it where he knows open grass is going to be. And CeeDee Lamb is running to that spot because they're seeing the same thing. I'd say I'm worried about the rest of the receiving core. I mean, there's not much proven that's there, but it's not like they got much out of that position last season, and the offense was still great. It's CeeDee Lamb and the other Cavaliers. Jake Ferguson is the second option again. It's fine. Like, if Lamb goes down, the season is over. I can accept that. I can live with that. He's been pretty durable. You just hope he doesn't go down. The main running backs, The main running backs are Ezekiel Elliott and Rico Dowdle. Admittedly, that is not good. But hey, Zeke can help in pass protection and just give Dak more time to find CeeDee. That's all you need. That's all you need. Keep Ferguson in to block as well. Who even needs him? Just get the two of them in. Help out the tackles. Dak just played playground ball with CeeDee. 100% target share. I'd buy into it. You could at least get to 8 wins like that, I feel like. And if Dowdle, I think that Dowdle has some potential. I'll definitely be snagging him in the late rounds of my fantasy drafts. I mentioned that when we were talking about the sleeper episodes. It's not like Pollard set some sort of high bar to clear as the starter. The Cowboys didn't get anything out of their other wide receivers last year. Or didn't get much. They didn't get much out of their running game either. It was still fine. I think if you told me Dowdle is just as good or better than Pollard was, or him and Zeke, some sort of combination of that is better than what they were working with last year, it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. Yeah, it's definitely mid on paper, but it was mid last year, right? The offensive line has gotten worse. And that's probably what concerns me the most. But it's not an untalented offensive line. I can certainly see the offense taking a hit going from Smith to Guyton. But let's say they kept Smith and Guyton was a pure backup or swing tackle or something like that. Or maybe they wouldn't even draft Guyton if they drafted Smith. Let's say it was just Tyron Smith again. Exactly how much of a safer bet is he in previous seasons at this point than a talented rookie like Guyton? Because with Smith, you knew you were getting a lead play when he was in, but he was just so injury prone. It's a pretty safe bet that he's not starting all 17 games. So you need Smith and a good backup. Now Guyton, it's probably going to be rough early. It wasn't always great at Oklahoma playing teams he certainly should have been great at. But already this preseason, he's holding his own against NFL talent, looking better than he did in some of his college games. Not perfect, but he's so athletic. He's such a freak. And the Cowboys have been as good as any team at drafting and developing talent. Going back to, I don't know when it started, I guess, but really their only miss in terms of draft classes recently has been 2023. That was a really bad draft. The rest of the 2020s, they have been better than any other team at drafting people and developing people. Tyler Smith was raw coming out of Tulsa. He's now the best guard in the league. So, yes, Guyton, it's going to be a drop-off, especially early. But by the time the playoffs roll around, if Guyton is healthy, it shouldn't prevent them from being a top offense in the conference. And then checking in on the defense, I think it'll mostly be the same. They've got Mike Zimmer instead of Dan Quinn. Don't think that has to be a downgrade. Zimmer knows how to create havoc with his pass rush paths. He's going to play CeeDee, I'm sure, everywhere. If that works, why go away from it? Zimmer in the past has been more of a zone cover guy behind his blitzes. Maybe he's a little bit more man than he has been in the past just because that fits the skill set of Trayvon Diggs and Deron Bland maybe, and that's what they've been doing with Quinn. But even if things look a little bit different than they have in the past, or the formulas, the coverages, it's more zone-based or man-based or whatever, the general philosophy is staying the same at the Dallas defense, and they have the players to pull it off. Micah Parsons himself gives you pass rush, and the offense applies pressure for teams to throw the ball. And against bad teams in the regular season, or mid-teams in the regular season, they get in these shootouts with Dallas, and they just can't compete because they throw a pick six to one of their ball hawks, or they get sacked, and it's strip sacked, and Micah Parsons wrecks the game. That's still going to be happening. This team is certainly flawed, but it's all the same flaws as they had last year. They've had these issues for a long time. Their wide receiving core is a one-man show. Okay. They have pass rushers and not corners. Okay. Their quarterback doesn't have a playoff track record. I get it. Their linebackers aren't reliable. That's always been the story with Dallas, as long as I've been alive. 12-5, 12-5, 12-5. That's all I got to say. That's the last 3 years. I'll say maybe 11-6 this time around. That's a small steps back, right? After an offseason where they were inactive and pissed everybody off, I can buy a small step back. But they're going to win double-digit games. I feel pretty confident about that. Next team. A team that I'm confident will not win double-digit games. The Carolina Panthers. I think they'd be my current bet to earn the first overall pick next year after losing it to the Bears this season. That's not a small thing. Not having your first round pick as the worst overall team in the league. I don't know if that's ever happened before. I don't think it had. And you're starting from such a bad place without a ton of reinforcements coming in or high-end reinforcements coming in. Yes, they're better. Yes, they're more competent, but how big of a leap are they taking? It's tough to see how the defense takes a step after the Brian Burns trade and losing Frankie Louvu. I feel for Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator. I think he's a good coordinator too. Like, I'm projecting the defense to be terrible, but I like him. He did a good job in Denver. He did a good job last year. He just keeps getting rewarded with less and less talent. Like, give this guy something to work with, please. I love his 3 deep fire zone philosophy. That's one of my, I think if you can blitz at a high rate with zone coverage behind it, like that's what Zimmer did. Loved his defenses. Love this defense. Do not let Evero get you into 3rd and long. Like, he will cook. The problem is, I just don't know how often the Panthers will get to 3rd and long this year. You know, they don't have a consistent one-on-one winner pass rusher anymore. Maybe Jadeveon Clowney can pick up more of the slack than I'm expecting. Like, maybe he did kind of have a year you could argue is just the same caliber and just as good as Brian Burns' last year, if not better. But it's just year to year. Clowney has never been much of a sack collector. I'm not sure if going from Baltimore to the Panthers is going to mean he stays at the exact same level. You know what I mean? And then Louvu's a big loss. Like, he was a big reason why they were able to create negative plays at the rate they did last year, and that kept their whole defense afloat. Now I just don't know if the negative plays come as often, and there's still plenty of holes in the secondary, especially if J.C. Horn gets hurt again, which he has basically every season. I think it wouldn't surprise me at all if this defense took even a bit of a step back from where they were last year because of the losses that they've had. Maybe that's too pessimistic. Maybe, but a step, a leap, a jump, I just don't really see it. On the offensive side of the ball, I mean, I like it a lot better. Like, I was watching them again for the first time in a while because I don't turn on a lot of Panthers film, and it all came crashing back down on me how little separation they got on any of their routes. They drafted Mingo way high, like in the early 2nd round, even though he played like the Ben Skoranek role in Ole Miss's offense. Like, wasn't really a nuanced route runner, or to me just didn't seem to have a very complete wide receiver skill set. Like, interesting player within a specific scheme, but I thought he was a reach where he was taken. And then they don't do anything cool with him. They just play 11 personnel and just throw him out there, and he's running routes downfield and doing none of the like tight end stuff, fullback stuff he was doing with Ole Miss that I thought would have made him appealing, like the uniqueness. No, he's like jumping out of bounds when he could drag his feet. He's dropping passes. He's looked bad this preseason. Thielen old, right? Still a starter, but now you've got Deontay Johnson. That's a legit separator. Maybe Xavier Legette won't be a legit separator right away, but he does have something that he can hang his hat on, and that's like his contested catch ability. Like, big, thick, sturdy, strong, can go up and grab it. A late breakout, I know that's concerning for wide receivers, but I think he showed enough on film last year to make me think he can be a good player. He's got the speed. He's got, like, you get this kind of height, weight, speed thing. He doesn't have any like ball tracking issues or catching issues that like Quentin Johnston had last season. I think that he can be a good player. Definitely an upgrade over what they had last year. And with those two added to the receiving core, yeah, things should be a lot more competent for Bryce Young. And with the investments they've made on the interior offensive line, like, that's going to help them out as well. But I think every single team can feel pretty good about what they did this offseason. It's pretty rare that a team, especially a team at the bottom of the league, like, doesn't make any kind of improvements on paper. Usually maybe the contenders get a little worse, like the Cowboys didn't make any moves. But like, every team fighting just stay out of the basement, like added a big free agent or big draft pick or something. The Carolina Panthers, they didn't make a pick until the 32nd overall pick, right? Or 31st, wherever Leggett went. So they're probably still going to be at the bottom. Their tackle situation with Icky, still very questionable. I'll believe it when I see it in terms of his turnaround. The receiving core is better, but it's still thin and a little injury prone with Johnson and Leggett being banged up off preseason. Canales, their new coach, he did some nice things in Tampa Bay last year. He let Baker kind of spread out, staying empty with 3-by-2 outside of him. What that does is force the defense to defend every blade of grass pre-snap. And I think some of these condensed formations and, play action offenses that are successful right now, yes, they confuse the defense, but I think they can confuse the quarterback too. And so to give Baker kind of these wide open looks like the ones he had at Oklahoma, where the defense kind of has to show its hand pre-snap, really helped him out. And it's something that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers didn't really run with Brady. They also incorporated, they mixed that and a healthy amount of play action, because Baker did have some success with that in Stefanski's scheme. So Canales was able to kind of mold his identity with what Baker had succeeded with in the past. I like that. I like that a lot. But he also was pretty stubborn with how he was running the football, and that I didn't like so much. So many of their series went run, that went nowhere. Second down, run, that went nowhere. They're in a 3rd and long situation now. Then they start to air it out, and they were kind of too good in 3rd and long. Shout out Baker, shout out Mike Evans, shout out Chris Godwin for converting so many 3rd and longs, but they were kind of disproportionately good in those situations last year. I don't think that's how you want your offense to live. And Canales has said all offseason, we're going to be stubborn running the ball. We're going to do it, and we're going to do it, we're going to do it. And the running back room is Jonathan Brooks and Chuba Hubbard. I'm not as much of a Jonathan Brooks fan as other people were with him coming out of Texas. Their line, it's better. It's very expensive, but is it going to move bodies up and down the field all game? I don't think so. I think this is going to be an inefficient and frequent rushing attack. And the quarterback room with Bryce Young, I think he can play better, but I do think that he has shown limitations that will make him always known as a disappointment when C.J. Stroud went right after him. I definitely think he can turn around. I think he can even be the Panthers franchise guy eventually, but is he going to be that top tier franchise guy ever with some of his limitations? I don't know. So it's just too many mid parts. I just don't think Canales is a slam dunk hire. Although I think he'll be maybe more bought in than Reich and have more of an identity than Reich did last year. The receiving core is fine, but if anybody goes down, you're kind of back to square one. The defense doesn't look any better than it did last year. It's still a bottom feeder team for me here. So I'm gonna say, I'll say 3 wins, 3-14. It's tough to find anybody that they should be favored against on the schedule. So that's 3 upsets, and then the rest all L's. Next up, Minnesota. They have had a very unfortunate offseason. Tragedy struck. Blackman, their other corner, tore his ACL. And that room is looking extremely thin right now. J.J. McCarthy, the 10th overall draft pick, gone for the year. Obviously, that wasn't their plan to start him week 1, so they could be able to overcome that, but it still hurts, right? It still hurts. If you knew he was going to miss his whole rookie season, I don't know. It just stinks to not get anything out of that 10th overall pick, right? The Vikings weren't that good last year. They earned that 10th overall pick, and they spent it on nothing that's going to help them now, right? Maybe it ends up being the right pick, but nothing that's going to help them in this record prediction. And I don't know. Someone's got to finish last in this division. And so that's what I've got Minnesota doing. But I still kind of like them in some ways. You cannot deny that Kevin O'Connell, JJ McCarthy, Jay Jettas, the other JJ, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson coming back by the end is a good situation for a quarterback to land in behind a good offensive line with Aaron Jones being added to the fold. I mean, it will be nice to see Sam Darnold when Robbie Chosen isn't his wide receiver one, as it's been so many times in the past. And we're like, Darnold is coming off his best stretch of games ever. He's 4-2 in his last little stint as the Panthers starter. 6 games he played at the end of 2022. He threw 7 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He had a career high success rate at that point, 8.2 yards per attempt. That's a great number to be at, by far his best. A quarterback rating or a passer rating of 92.6. That's on the 153.8 scale. And then the ESPN QBR, which is on a 0 to 100 scale, he was above 50 for the first time when he was with the Panthers. So that was nice to see. It showed like, okay, this guy can actually catch fire for some spurts like we thought when we traded for him, if you're a Panthers fan. And several Panthers fans thought he did enough to earn the starting job and come back next year. And I don't think he did quite that. Like, there was a bit of a collapse in the very last game, but he was playing well. He was legitimately playing pretty well at that point. He's had a year in San Francisco now. He's going to Minnesota. I could definitely see him getting hot and legitimately looking like a good quarterback for several of their games. The question is, how many games will that be? I don't think it's any guarantee that the Vikings quarterback situation got bad, like markedly better this year to last year, because it was a disaster in the back half of last season, but it was truly a tale of 2 years in terms of their quarterback play. Because for 8 full games? Was it 9? Kirk was playing some of, if not the best football of his life. With JJ healthy too. Like, their passing attack was putting up numbers, and then Josh Dobbs came in. He looked good for like a game or two. So they ended up with like 9-10 games of what I would consider good quarterback play, or exciting quarterback play, explosive quarterback play. This year, I don't think it'll ever reach the depths that it was when it was bad last year, but it will also probably never reach the heights with Sam Darnold. Like, he's never been that good at taking care of the football. And he's always taken a good amount of sacks, and his pocket presence you could question a lot more than you could for Kirk Cousins. So will they get the half the season of like MVP dark horse quarterback play? Probably not. The Vikings in 2023 ended in most metrics around like the 14 or 15 ranked mark, and like EPA, DVOA, things like that. This year, I think that's on the table. They could do that, but it also has the potential to be lower a full year of Sam Darnold, even if he catches fire for a streak or a game or several games. Like, overall, has the quarterback room improved from where it was last year, or has it stayed the same or gotten worse? I think stayed the same is a pretty safe bet. I'm kind of projecting like 16th or 17th type numbers, which is pretty similar. Maybe a tiny step back. On the defensive side of the ball, Flores is going to do his thing. I think he can manufacture pressure with how often he sends 6 and always has, right? And he's got some bodies that are intriguing in the front 7. Andrew Van Ginkel he brought over from Miami. I think that's going to be a good addition. Same thing with Blake Cashman. I think he fits this system. Dallas Turner as well. Like, he can pin his ears back and rush and bend under a table, right, and corner around the outside. But he's also very special dropping into coverage if you want to kind of disguise your looks, walk everybody up, drop some outside linebackers back, bring some safeties like Bynum or Josh Metellus, something like that. That's a good scheme fit. Harrison Phillips is a good nose tackle. Like, they've got guys in the front 7. I just think, man, Byron Murphy Jr. and Stephon Gilmore as your cornerback duo. Shaquille Griffin out there. I think all of those guys can be picked on. All of those guys. Gilmore, the charting numbers have always treated him well. These past couple of years, I don't know how good or how much of a positive he's actually been when it really comes down to it. I do think that he's noticeably lost some steps, and he was unsigned at this point in the season for a reason. I know some people excited about that signing. I can't really get there. And if you can protect this, or you're a quarterback who's good against the blitz, I think the Vikings will be picked apart. And the offense is good, but it is a bit thin. Aaron Jones, great running back, but he's had several injuries over the past few years. And once he's out, it's Ty Chandler and Kiki Nwangu, who are kind of talented rushers, but I worry about like the pass protection if Aaron Jones goes down. That flaring up. The wide receiver room has got Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, but Addison's had a really tumultuous offseason and already been banged up in training camp. If he's healthy, it's good. But then outside of him, it's Jalen Naylor, Trent Sherfield, Tristan Jackson, who's been a Brandon Powell. Like, some of these guys are good preseason players, but man, with TJ Hawkinson out, the weapons are just looking a little thin for my taste. The interior of the offensive line still probably prevents it from being a truly elite unit there. Like I said before, someone's got to finish last in this division, and I've got it at Minnesota, going 6-11. Small drop off from last year, right? I think they won 7 games last season. Minnesota's tough to predict because I say they go 6-11, but I also think like 15 of their 17 games are going to come down to the 2-minute warning and like if they can score a field goal or not. So who the hell knows how their record could finish with Kevin O'Connell? It seems to always go down to the wire, and it'll come down to their close game luck. But right now, I think 6-11 is a safe record for them at the bottom of the NFC North. It's not a bad record for a division loser. I think in a different setting, they could be an 8-9 win team, but here I don't know. I don't see them taking too much off the Lions or the Packers or even the Bears at this point. Moving on now to the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm a bit worried about them. I've gone back and forth all offseason on who I think is better between the Cowboys and the Eagles. I think I've landed at the Cowboys at the end of the day, because I'm just terrified of the vibes in Philadelphia. Not that vibes-based analysis is always the right thing to do, but when I read that ESPN article that mentioned all the tumult that Nick Sirianni caused, like hijacking the offensive plays, Jalen Hurts apparently like can't meet with him one-on-one anymore because he was pissing him off so much. Like, that's bad. That's bad. And I get that Brian Johnson wasn't a very talented play caller last year, and like the offense was ugly. They abandoned their running game. They were terrible against the blitz. Okay. Is that all Brian Johnson's fault, or is the problem still there? That's what I want to know. I think the problem could still be there. I don't know how you can be a good offensive coordinator if there's not a cohesive vision, which there wasn't. Now maybe Kellen Moore will smooth everything over. Kellen Moore, who famously like pissed Mike McCarthy off, and there was no shared vision there, and Kellen Moore got fired despite the fact that the results in the offense was great. And the Cowboys offense, honestly, like, I didn't think it would happen. I thought Kellen Moore was kind of unjustly let go, but it's kind of tough to argue with the results that the Cowboys got this year compared to last. You know, like, I don't know. I just don't know if like the Kellen Moore addition specifically solves all these issues for the offense. The thing I'm most worried about is how they handle the blitz. I think we'll find out pretty early if there's actually reason to be concerned about the Eagles or not. So, last season, from December onward, when things really fell off the rails, the Eagles were truly terrible handling the blitz. They were negative 0.14 EPA per dropback against 5+ rushers, which means every time they drop back against the blitz, they were losing about a 1/10 of a point on their scoreboard in terms of value. That was only above the Chargers, Bears, Jets, Panthers, Browns, Patriots, and Commanders, aka the worst offenses and most dysfunctional teams in the league last year, including one that was coordinated by Kellen Moore. Just want to point it out there. Obviously, there was more than just him going wrong with the Chargers offense last season, but again, this is supposed to be the coordination savior, right? No more Brian Johnson, but the Chargers' results last year were not very stellar. So they were 14th in EPA per dropback against the blitz, and opposing defenses knew it. They were in the 94th percentile over the last month or two of last season in terms of how often they faced the blitz. 37% of the time, opposing DCs heated up the Eagles. And over again, they showed that they don't really have the capability to sort these out. And this year, Jason Kelce is gone. All-pro lineman, best center in the game, even still. It's going to get even tougher. It's going to get even tougher. Losing an all-pro lineman like that, it's not nothing. It's not nothing. I get that it's easy to say, oh, Saquon, look at the stars. Look at the A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith. They had all those guys last year. Didn't mean they were immune from struggling. Didn't mean you can get away with horrific team chemistry. I just think this offense is going to look frustrating again. I think the loss of Steichen is going to set this team back for more than just 1 year on the offensive side of the ball. I think they'll still be explosive. I like Saquon. There's still some linemen there that are very good if Lane Johnson can stay healthy. But if he doesn't, and he's dealt with injuries over the course of his career and is getting up there in age, if he goes down, then I'm very concerned about this offensive line, to be honest. So I think it'll be fine offense. I think they'll end up being good enough. I think they'll still hit the go balls. A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith will generate enough offense, and Jalen Hurts, who I believe is a good quarterback. I think it's going to be good, but the expectation with Philadelphia, as long as these guys are around, is the best, right? Top 1, top 2. Can they go back to 2022? That window isn't supposed to be closed. I kind of think for the offense, it is. It is. Now, the defense, I do like a bit better because Matt Patricia, the defensive play calling, it just has to get better. It just has to. Sirianni probably isn't going to mess with it that much as an offensive-minded guy. And when he messed with it last year, appointing Matt Patricia, Matt Patricia had the most vanilla, boring looks you could possibly imagine. It looked like the Madden defenses, where there's not a single stunt along the defensive line, no one overlapping. There's no disguised coverages either. It's just what you call is what you get. And it's just a very basic version of NFL plays that are supposed to be much more nuanced. No, when you watch Patricia, everybody's just going straight in a straight line. So Vic Fangio should remedy that. His defense last year, though, it wasn't without its problems. And it seemed like all the Miami Dolphins players were happy to see him go. So again, entering a Philadelphia situation where everybody's a bit on edge, is Fangio going to be the ideal perfect fit? I think if you're getting the Fangio that we got in years past, maybe, he's got that potential. But if he has the same caliber season that he had last year, then it's not going to fix all their issues. Because I think the Dolphins defense last season was a bit less than the sum of its parts. They'll be relying on corners that are a bit out of their prime, Bradbury and Slay, and then also corners that are rookies, Quinion Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. I'm a little bit worried about that. Who is in the prime of their career right now on the back end? Kind of no one. Their linebacker room, Devin White, he's been a massive disappointment these past few seasons. I was really not a fan of Jeremiah Trotter. I would like to see as much Nakobe Dean as possible out there this year. He's the only guy in that linebacker room that gets me really excited. They've got 2 guys that I think could be negatives, and in Trotter's case, I think he could be a big negative. He did not hit the athletic marks for me that I need to see to get drafted by, at least if I was a hypothetical GM, at all. So there's too many question marks for the Eagles this year. I think it's going to be frustrating. I've gone back and forth on it all offseason. I'm landing here. I'm going to say 9-8 for the Eagles next season. It's a bit their floor, but I don't know. I think Sirianni is on a downward spiral, and that's what I'm going with. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons. I'll keep this pretty brief because I talked about them on TikTok, one of the 2 videos that I made. I'm a little bit lower on the Falcons as well this year, as well as the Eagles, the bird teams. Not feeling the energy as much as some people. My problem with the Falcons basically comes down to depth. They've got the stars. Okay. I love Kyle Pitts. I love Drake London. I love Bijan Robinson, Chris Lindstrom. Kirk Cousins is going to be better than Desmond Ridder. I get it. I love A.J. Terrell, Jesse Bates. But I can't ignore some of the other names I see starting on this depth chart that I'm looking at. Okay, Drake London, cool. Darnell Mooney, wide receiver 2 after him. Ray McLeod, wide receiver 3. They better hope nothing happens. And something already has happened with Rondale Moore on IR, missing the entire season. Look on the defensive side of the ball. A.J. Terrell, very nice. Love him. Kevin King, next on the depth chart. Mike Hughes would become a franchise legend in maybe not the most positive way. Kirk Cousins at quarterback. He's better than Ritter. But Cousins doesn't save you from going 8-8. Okay? Cousins has gone or hovered around 500 a ton in his career. 4-4 last season. 8-8 2021. 2020 7-9. 2018 8-7. 2017 7-9. 2016 8-7. 2015 9-7. Quarterbacks don't completely determine who wins and loses football games, certainly. But they do have more of an impact than other players, and I just don't think, like, Kirk Cousins isn't a Josh Allen or like an Aaron Rodgers or a Patrick Mahomes or one of these, or Lamar, who prevents you from ever dipping below double-digit wins. You know what I'm saying? And this Falcons roster is, like, good, but it's also the worst situation that he's had in quite some time. Like, I'm taking Justin Jefferson, Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen, Dalvin Cook, whatever era of the Vikings weapons, TJ Hawkinson, you want to point to. Like, these weapons in Atlanta are good right now, but they're not as good as what Kirk has had in Minnesota since he's gotten there. And the defense isn't as good as, like, when Mike Zimmer was there earlier. So is he gonna? So now it's, I feel like the expectation for everybody for the Falcons is, like, they win double-digit games. He has a better season this year than almost every year outside of 2022 that he finished with the Vikings. I just don't think there's any real guarantee that happens. He hasn't always looked as good as he did at the end of at the beginning of 2023, the end of his career with the Vikings. And now he's coming off the injury. So I think the offense will be fine. I think it will be better. I think it will be competent. I think they will maybe be even the best offense in the division. But I don't think it's going to really be a top-tier offense over the landscape of the NFL or even the NFC. And then moving back to the defensive side of the ball, I've already highlighted the major weaknesses that they have in the cornerback room. Still not convinced about this front seven. Yes, they just added Matthew Judon. I'm impressed that they've gotten him to play without a new contract. I don't really understand that from his point of view. He came out with this quote that said, "They don't know me as a man, a football player. Like, how can I demand something that I haven't earned from them?" Bro, you earned it in New England. You had 15.5 sacks in 2022. They saw that. They watched the film. That's why they traded for you. But hey, I guess he's a stand-up guy if you're a Falcons fan, because I would have been doing a Hassan Reddick situation right now. Like, you traded for me, you need me. Braylon Trice just went down with an ACL. Like, damn, I'm demanding more money. You guys need me more than the New England Patriots do. That would be my mindset with him. So it's nice that they have seemingly got him kind of on the cheap, and maybe they don't have to tie like a ton of money in him at age 32, and maybe he's got another good season in him. But he is getting a little bit on the older side. Suffered an injury last year. And outside of Judon, I'm like, I don't know about the rest of this front seven. Troy Anderson, Arnold Ebiketie, Caden Ellis, Zach Harrison, David Onyemata, Grady Jarrett. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. It's just, they better not suffer any injuries just anywhere across this team. That's the number one thing that scares me. If everybody's healthy, everything goes perfect, they will win this division. They will have a good offense. But they are just not really equipped to deal with any road bumps, which they've already suffered some of. And I really think if they wanted to go all in on this era and make this team a real contender, they have just one or two holes that could have been filled if they used that 9th overall pick on something else. And maybe Penix can still redeem himself by being great later. But as far as spending a bunch of money on this year's roster, but not fully going all in, I think it just kind of means disappointment in this era. Doesn't mean Penix will always be bad or that pick will always look horrible, but that pick right now didn't make a lot of sense, and I do think we'll feel the ramifications of that during the season for the Atlanta Falcons. I did make a video about them on TikTok. I said they'd go 7-10. Since I made that video, they have added Matthew Judon. They have added Justin Simmons. I'll say that earns them another win somewhere. I'll say 8-9. Next up, we got the San Francisco 49ers, which is a pretty easy evaluation. These guys are good. Brock Purdy, Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, George Kittle, Kyle Juszczyk. Yeah, man. Trent Williams isn't currently on the depth chart. He is out, holding out. Jalen Moore is at that spot right now. Who knows what happens with that holdout? It's gotten a lot less publicity than the Brandon Ayuk one, but it's just as significant. I'm working under the assumption that both of those guys will be back, and the Shanahan offense will click on all cylinders like it has for the past several years now. Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo, Matt Ryan, it doesn't matter who's there. He elevates everybody and wins a lot of games, it seems. It's still going to happen. The only thing that really concerns me with them is their run defense. When you can get running downhill, you can make it a game with the 49ers. They lost Chase Young, who's a good run defender. They lost Eric Armstead, who is not a great run defender, but it's not like they replaced him with a great run defender. Dre Greenlaw out for an indefinite amount of time. That'll hurt. I think the rest of their division has gotten better. The Cardinals adding Marvin Harrison Jr., the Seahawks adding Mike McDonald, whose defense gave them a ton of trouble last year. I think that Seattle is going to win a game off the 49ers this year. And maybe that's the difference between last year and this year. It's just like they always sweep the Seahawks. This year they don't. And instead of winning 12 games, they win 11. Because that's my record prediction here. I don't even have much to say about them. They're going to look about the same. Maybe not quite as strong as they have been in the past, but it's not going to manifest in like 6 less wins or even 4. I think it might mean 1 or 2. So I'm just going to speed right through this one and say, San Francisco, you're good. You're going to be 11-5. I think once you get to the playoffs, offensive line could start to sell a little bit. I do still question Brock Purdy's upside the tiniest bit when it comes to matching up with like the Mahomeses of the world and going band for band with a guy like that, a big throw for big throw with a guy like that. Defense isn't devoid of question marks. It seems to be, they got a new defensive coordinator again, a first-year guy. It seems to be the weakest iteration of the 49ers defense that maybe we've seen in a bit. Again, nothing to be overly concerned about, but like I covered in a previous episode, I don't think they're going to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl again. But regular season record, yeah, they're going to be good. Last team to get to, the Chicago Bears. Obviously, optimism through the roof, as it should be. I think we've all seen what Caleb Williams is capable of. I actually missed the preseason game tonight. But the Bears won, capping a 4-0 preseason for them. So hard to get much better than that. It's hard to build much more excitement than they've built with the plays that Caleb has been able to make. And I definitely think they're going to take a big leap on the offensive side of the ball. Caleb just has more natural pocket awareness than Fields did. Like, they both can create the big plays. They both have the highlights that match up with anybody in NFL history. All right, but Caleb is a more consistent one. And I love Rome Odunze. I think with Shane Waldron, you're going to see them drop back and pass at a rate that Bears fans haven't seen maybe ever. Maybe ever. I think they're going to be top 5 in pass rate for sure. I think they could play with the idea of being one of the more spread out offenses in the entire league. I know that Caleb says that Aaron Rodgers is the guy he always modeled his game after. And Rodgers has been through multiple different offenses in his career, really just 2. One was the most spread out, like West Coast offense in the league under Mike McCarthy. One is one of the more condensed, Shanahan-y styles in Matt LaFleur. Waldron has undergone kind of an interesting shift in his career. He started out coming from the McVay tree that always finished first in the league in condensed formation, with the formation just very small. They like to make their reads muddy. They like to insert guys into the block for into the blocking scheme for angles. But then when Waldron left LA and went to the Seahawks, and they built a team with a franchise quarterback like Geno, 3 great receivers, kind of a questionable offensive line, a dynamic, shifty running back in the backfield. What he did was completely different than the Sean McVay type offenses. Not completely different, but it looked a lot different. The Seahawks actually had the widest formations in all of football last year. Could Waldron kind of turn the knob up on that now that his offensive core has almost been kind of supercharged from where it was with Geno? Like Caleb is that type of prospect. Rome Odunze is that type of prospect. Like the Seahawks are a very good offense. It's lofty to be better than them, but the Bears are talented enough to be that. So does Waldron kind of continue this return to spread, return to like maybe 2014 type ball that everybody was playing a couple years ago? The Bradys, the Mannings, the Breezes, the Rodgerses. That's what we think of the previous era, was spread out and let them choose where they want to go. Whereas now things are kind of more predetermined, helped out with motion. Like Waldron has that background, but he's kind of drifted away from it. It feels like a little bit, at least. So it'll be interesting to see how the offense is designed. I think that whatever happens, there will be big plays through the air. My question with the Bears will be, how about the easy stuff? How about just the simple, you need 4 yards, you run the ball, you get it? Because DeAndre Swift is one player that I'm always kind of low on. And I think one stat that always illustrates this is last year the Eagles were first in yards before contact and last in yards after contact. That to me says something about Swift. He hasn't been able to really enchant a coaching staff like the way he's been able to enchant kind of the general public with some of his big plays. The Lions obviously traded him. The Eagles let him go after a successful season. Now he's with the Bears, and I just think if he's the leader in your backfield, your running game is just kind of bound to be disappointing. You may wonder, like, oh, he hurdled somebody, he juked somebody. Why aren't they giving him the ball more? Like, that seems to be what the last 2 fan bases have wondered, and it might just be because he's too East and West. He just can be too frustrating, too inconsistent for some of these coaching staffs, I believe. And if he's your lead back, I worry in a division that features some of the best running back rooms in the entire league, along with great passing attacks, if the Bears kind of fall behind and are just a bit more frustrating and aren't quite at their final form like maybe people hope that they are right away. And then their weapons haven't had the world's greatest preseason. Like Keenan Allen looks kind of overweight. He looks kind of slow against the man coverage. Is he going to be, are they going to have 3 1,000-yard receivers like they thought? Or is Keenan Allen at this point in his career not quite going to be as productive as he was with Justin Herbert, right? Justin Herbert always got Keenan Allen. From the moment he got there, he got Keenan Allen when he was in shape, when he was at his best, and they developed a chemistry that by the end, like against zone coverage, Justin Herbert just knew where to go and would get the ball out to Keenan quick, spit the ball out, was perfectly happy exploiting those underneath zones with him. Is Caleb going to have that kind of chemistry with him right away? And especially if it's a lesser version of Keenan, I think that he might have less of an impact than people are thinking. Maybe that's a preseason overreaction, though. Rome and DJ Moore, I can't really poke too many holes in. Those two, I think, are going to be pretty electric and make the Bears offense really tick. But the running game and that third receiver spot, I don't know if it's going to be quite what people are imagining. On the defensive side of the ball, I love the secondary. Don't love the defensive line as much. Montez Sweat was electric when he got there. The defense definitely took a step when he was in. Is that going to sustain over the course of the entire season? I mean, if Montez Sweat was the only rusher in Washington right now, how good would you feel about the pass rush? If they traded Chase Young away and kept Montez Sweat as the edge one. I feel like Sweat going to a high-profile team like the Bears and playing good for the spurt that he got traded there has kind of upped his status as a player. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball now. I like it. I mean, it was really elite at the end of last season. Their secondary is amazing. It is amazing. I mentioned the Saints have a top 3 secondary with the Jets and the Ravens. The Bears are right up there as well. Tyreek Stevenson, I'm extremely high on. The way he was playing at the end of last season was unbelievable. Went from a 68.4% completion percentage against him in the first half of the year down to 44% the last half of the year. 5 touchdowns against him, 0 picks the first half of the year, 4 interceptions, no touchdowns allowed the last half. So he was beginning to look extremely locked down by the end. Jalen Johnson looked locked down the whole time. Good safety duo. Kyler Gordon is starting to come on a little bit. My question is their pass rush. I know everybody loves Montez Sweat. He did wonders for him last year. It's good that they have him. But outside of Sweat, who's going to be the one that steps up? Because the Bears' pressure rate last season ranked near the bottom of the entire league. And Montez Sweat is good, but he didn't quite rank in the top 10 in a lot of metrics last year. Pass rush win rate, pressure rate. Didn't quite have the lofty results I need to see to trust him as the number 1 alpha guy in a pass rush room over the course of the entire season. Now, maybe Poles can still work something. There are some edge rushers out there. Hassan Reddick has demanded a trade. Nothing has happened with him yet. A guy like that would go a long way in me projecting the Bears' defense going from good to great. Because right now, Garvin Dexter, Austin Booker, Billings, they have some potential. They could be good, but they could also be just average or even disappointing. I don't think it's a guarantee that they all hit their upside like they need to hit for this defensive line to be anywhere near this. This might be the worst defensive line in the division. These might be the worst trenches in the division, offensive line and defensive line in Chicago. And I think that will prevent them from being elite right away. Caleb, I think he's legit. Rome, I think he's legit. DJ Moore, I think he's legit. But it's still a flawed team. And I worry about just getting the easy stuff done. Getting pressure consistently. Running the ball consistently. Caleb creating these big plays at the same rate in the regular season that he did in the preseason. I mean, even in the Bengals game, when he had all those amazing throws, it was 0-0. All the Bears starters out there at the end of the first quarter against the Bengals backups, right? So it wasn't perfect. It wasn't totally dissuading me from saying the Bears will finish with a disappointing 8-9 record. That's what I'm going with. 8-9. I think Chicago won't be happy with a losing record. 9-8 minimum is what it would take to keep the city happy. I don't think they'll be too far away from that. I could certainly see it happening, but right now I'm going to be a little bit cautious. I think I'm optimistic about their future, but in terms of their present to contend right here, right now, it'll be the best Bears team in a while, but I don't think they're going to pass the Lions and Packers in this division, and I think that they're still going to be a bit inconsistent. So 8-9. Man, I've been talking for a long time. It's kind of late at night. I'm going to go ahead and sign off after this. We will do more division. Man, that is 8 teams. I've been talking a long time. We'll go through it one more time. Saints 10-7. Dallas 11-6. Carolina 3-14. Minnesota 6-11. Philly 9-8. Atlanta 8-9, San Francisco 11-5, Chicago 8-9. Those are my first batch of record predictions. We'll do part 2 of the NFC next time on Tuesday. And then we'll get into the AFC a week from now on Friday. Then do the part 2 the next episode. And then into the season will damn near be here. I don't know exactly how that lines up, but anyway, hope you enjoyed the episode. Subscribe if you haven't already, wherever you're listening. Leave a comments about how much you hate all these record predictions below. Or if you love them and you're a Saints fan and you say you're the only one giving us respect, thank you. Say that as well. Whatever is on your mind. Leave a comment, leave a review. Subscribe to me on TikTok at TheoAshNFL, on Twitter at TheoAshNFL. See all the contributions I make for PFN at PFN365 on all platforms. And thank you so much for listening. I will see you on Tuesday.